There's a chart in each one of the milestones showing where these reductions are going to come from. Well, in Virginia, we'll be getting them from wastewater plants. We'll be getting them from the urban sector. And it should come as no surprise, we're going to be getting a big chunk of these from agriculture. Because as you've seen, as you all know, in many of the jurisdictions, agriculture is a very large land use. It's a very cost-effective area to get pollution reductions. We've been doing that in Virginia by putting significant money into just 5 conservation practices, and we will continue to do so. So you see in the graph that we plan to get a big chunk of our reductions from agriculture. As you move forward into the future with future milestones, the pieces, the size and shapes of these pieces of the pie, they will change. We cannot get there just by focusing on agriculture. But in Virginia's first 2-year milestone, we will be relying heavily on agricultural reductions. The next slide and all the milestones will show you where some of the money is coming from. Farm Bill money, we're extremely grateful for the federal money that's coming from that program. In Virginia alone, we'll be putting $38 million worth of Farm Bill money on the ground. We've got significant state money going into ag conservation practices. And then towards the bottom, you see that the huge success for us during Governor Kane's administration has been point sources. We have put over $1 billion into point sources through grants and loans, and we've achieved significant reductions from those, and we will continue to get more in our next milestone. So significant money being put on the ground, significant more money is still needed. And then when you get to the back of the milestones, you start getting into more of the practices. These are some of the things in Virginia that we are currently doing. Money for ag conservation, money for point sources, working with poultry companies, working with implementing more aggressive stormwater regs. These will get us a long way. They will not get us the whole way there. Again, we need to put more policies and practices on the ground. The next part actually shows the amount of practices that we'll be implementing. These are the acres of cover crops and the feet of stream fencing and the miles of forest buffers. Significant numbers of practices that need to be put on the ground to meet these milestones. And then the last part is additional reduction options that will be needed to meet our milestone. This varies considerably between the jurisdictions. In Virginia, we don't know exactly what that list will be yet. We have sat down with the governor. We have a number of things that we are considering, and now we'll go back and work with the budget and legislative agendas to figure out what we need to do. Looking at some of the other jurisdictions, you might see a more extensive list on this part of the milestone if you flip through it. So what we want to be able to do, you take all these jurisdictions, I just showed you how we're cranking it up in Virginia. We want to be able to roll this all up and show what the progress will be basin-wide. So what you'll see is that there is a single basin-wide milestone, and what we have committed to, again, these are similar graphs that you just saw for Virginia, but for nitrogen, currently bay-wide, almost 260 million pounds of nitrogen a year going into the water. We have committed to take that down to 243 million pounds. If you do the math based over the projection we were on versus what we've committed to, we have committed to a 77% increase in the rate of nitrogen pollution reductions from the bay's waters. That is a significant increase in rate of progress. If you look at phosphorus, do the same kind of math, a 79% increase. So again, much credit to all the jurisdictions. A lot of work has gone into these milestones to come up with these kind of numbers, and we should be proud that we're coming forward today with these kind of rates of increased progress for the next 2.5 years. Moving on to the end date, what Governor Kane committed us to doing last year was to work on these near-term milestones, see how we can crank up progress, and then see when that'll get us done. I mean, the next logical question is, you've cranked it up, when are you going to be done? So what we have committed to doing is setting a new restoration date that I will propose to you for consideration today, Mr. Chair. The definition of that is not the date when all the water will be clean and comes off EPA's dirty waters list. What's important is to pick a date when you will have put all the actions you need to do on the ground. We heard some of this morning about tipping points and lag times. We can't tell you exactly what day all the water will be clean, but we ought to be able to tell you when we're going to be done implementing all the actions that we need to implement. So that's what we propose for a new restoration, the definition of a new restoration end date. And the number that we propose to you all is no later than 2025. And those 3 words, no later than, are significant, because what it means is that we will be done by 2025. Some states might be able to do it sooner based on the milestones. Some of them are committing to do it sooner. Some of us, Virginia probably has one of the bigger loads to carry, but we're committed to getting it done by 2025. I'm an optimist that there will be new technologies, there will be new practices. There was discussion about tipping points this morning where I think we'll hit points where restoration will take off more quickly. I would encourage us all to get this done quicker than 2025. But what I would also remind you of is just a year ago when you all met, if you looked at the rate of progress that was projected, some jurisdictions were predicting not to meet their end goals until 2040 and beyond. So we stand before you today saying that we've come forward with these milestones, we've cranked up restoration efforts, and we propose a date of no later than 2025. And just lastly, one slide, we wanted to make certain we can track progress. We have current tracking programs in the Bay program. We're not creating new levels of effort. We will use the same tracking programs. We can report on these. You heard Jeff talk about the Bay barometer. We can now use that to show progress towards meeting our milestones. We will continue to adapt. Adaptive management cannot be said enough. If we come across something that's not working, stop doing it. If we come across something new that we didn't know about, let's give it a shot. So these milestones, the practices in them, will adapt over time. And then last, Mr. Chairman, what I have up here is called Plan B. You've heard about contingencies, consequences. How do we build that into a milestone? What do you do if you say, here's what you're going to implement, and you don't get it done? Does something different kick in? Does Plan B kick in? Well, I would argue there's 3 lines of reasoning when we started discussing this. One is, if you put Plan B forward now, aren't you admitting that Plan A is not going to work? So why don't you just go with Plan B? A second line of reasoning is that maybe you should hang Plan B out there, because if you don't like what's in Plan A, you're probably really not going to like what's in Plan B. So maybe you should hang that out there and force people to get Plan A done. And then the third line of reasoning is, well, if this is all getting wrapped up into the Bay TMDL, which you're about to hear about, maybe it's the federal government's requirement to put contingencies and consequences upon us and not have the states come up with a way to punish ourselves. So I say that, Mr. Chair, just to let you know that the issue of contingencies was not, we didn't have consensus agreement on it. It's dealt with differing levels within each jurisdiction's milestones, and we'll continue to wrestle with this issue as we move forward.